Welcome back to Anarchy in the Ukulele. I'm here on the hottest day of the year. I'm absolutely boiling. I've got no aircon on because we're filming. But I'm here to talk to you about 4StringBoy, Sammy Turton, about his new album called Vejr. And Vejr means weather in Danish. It's all themed about the weather. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the album, play you a little bit of a couple of tracks, and then I've got Sammy himself to talk about putting the album together, and we have a really good chat about sort of how it was recorded, how it's written, all that kind of stuff. So if you want to just listen to the interview, go to this bit here. But if not, you'll hear my ramblings about what I think about the album. It's available from all the usual streaming places at the end of September. Sammy's very kindly given us an early listen so that we can go through it for you. I think if you pre-order it on his website, which is 4StringBoy.com, then you get an early release of it, I believe. I think that's what he said, something along those lines. Who knows? I'm really hot. The weather is bloody hot. It's 30 odd degrees, about 40 degrees in this room, I think, as it stands at the minute. So yeah, let's get into the album. So I'm going to say it's not about the weather, it's themed to do with weather, and all the tracks are titles to do with the weather. I quite like that because the music is very relatable to the titles, and I think there's a clear thread going through it that means that you can really hear that relationship, and you have to be quite creative in your writing. It gives you a direction as opposed to just writing 11 or 12 nice tunes and nice pieces of music. There's a purpose behind each one that is relatable to the title. So I think that's really important and a really good thing. Titles of the pieces. We have Sunrise, we have Breeze, we have Frost, Overcast, 25 degrees Fahrenheit. Interesting one that is. Fog, Sunshine, 12 degrees C, Storm, Rain and Sunset. So one thing occurred to me with this is it's kind of like if you had a day that had like every weather condition, this would be the day. And the album starts with a piece called Sunset, and the piece itself really is the beginning of something. You can hear it within the piece. In fact, I'm going to play you a little bit of that in a moment. And it starts with strings, and there's this build, this sense of something is about to happen, something new is about to happen, and it's the start of something new, which is exactly right for the start of an album, but also very descriptive of a sunrise. Did I say sunset? Sunrise. And similarly, at the end of the album, you have Sunset. It is a definitive ending of something within the music. So I think those little touches are really nice. Like I say, it's almost like a day that runs through all these weather conditions. It would be one weird day worth of weather, but that's kind of how it runs. So yeah, the writing's really relatable to these titles, even down to things like, you know, where Sammy's using major and minor keys, dependent on the weather. You know, and we all know, you know, if it's foggy, it's going to be a bit of a minor day. It's not going to be a happy major day. If it's sunshine, it's going to be that kind of happy major sound. So simple stuff, but really effective when you're doing it, I think. And just before we listen to Sunrise, let me talk about a little bit about instrumentation, because I said like there's the strings and things like that. So this album, it is 100% ukulele based, in that you can't mistake that it's a ukulele album. But there's also what Sammy would term backing tracks or arrangements that go with the ukulele. So the way I like to think about it is, if you've got this spectrum of sound, this frequency range of sound. So let's say the desk is frequency range. We've got bass down here like a piano keyboard, and we've got treble up the top here. The ukulele sits somewhere around about here. It can play up this little bit here, maybe not quite as far as up to there, unless you get right up the neck and harmonics and things, but it kind of sits around about here. And then what Sammy does is he also adds in some baritone ukulele, sometimes in combination with the tenor ukulele that he uses mostly, which is a high G. So he adds the baritone in, which adds that little bit more depth and takes us down to there. Some ukulele albums, that's what you get, and you get everything in that kind of frequency range. And personally, if it's solo and all you're getting is solo ukulele, then it's either going to be baritone, which I guess baritone can give you the fuller range, maybe down to about there, or it's going to be a tenor ukulele, which is giving you that sort of range. And I find it a bit tiring to listen to a whole album of that. What Sammy does is he adds in piano, double bass and strings, low strings, and there's a couple of other things on there as well, but the gist of it is probably piano and strings. And what that does is it uses up the full frequency range, because his piano playing is very cleverly done so that it's weaving in and out of the ukulele range, but you're adding in some bass and some treble. The strings, the same thing. There's a lot of lower end of strings, so you're talking down here with your strings. It gives you this full range of sound that a lot of ukulele albums don't. So that's the one thing that really impresses me with it, and that I really like about it. And because of that, it means that certain songs use a slightly narrow range, certain parts of songs use a narrow range and then expand out. It keeps very fresh in your ears when you're listening to it. It keeps you on board with it. You don't kind of drift too much, which I find if something is the same all the time on every song, you tend to stop listening a little bit, and you get to the end of the album and you think, oh, that was nice, but you haven't truly listened to it. This keeps dragging you back in. That, alongside the different styles on here. And when I say styles, it's really just different ways of writing that are trying to relate to the titles. So Sunrise is a fairly happy, atmospheric type song. Breeze adds a little bit more movement into that. Frost, which is one of my favourites, the thing I like about Frost is it adds in all different elements of Frost. So for instance, Frost could be, you get up in the morning and you look out your window and you see a landscape of frost, and it's beautiful, it's twinkly, it's that layer of frost on the ground and in the trees, and it's pretty to look at, particularly when you're inside and you're nice and warm and wrapped up. But frost also has a jagged sort of element to it, an edgy element to it. It can be dangerous. It can be icy. Ice can be sharp, and there's just a little hint of that within Frost. So you get these really nice melodic and harmonic phrases. Very, very nice and pleasant to listen to. But then there's this little edgy rhythm part that kind of goes in, and it just is a little bit on edge. And that, to me, whether I'm reading too much into it or not, that to me gives you that whole kind of overview of what Frost could be. I think that's really, really clever writing. I must say, they're instrumental songs. I guess they err more towards the classical style, but I wouldn't call them classical. They're very sort of filmic in that they would suit being used in films and TV and being set to picture really, really well. I can definitely hear that side of it, and it's that style of writing which I think is why theming the album has been so important, because it gives you as if you're writing to images, because everybody knows what a sunset is, everyone knows what sunrise is and what that looks like. So when you hear a piece called Sunrise, automatically in your mind, you don't need to be watching a film of it. It fits really nicely. There's a piece in here called Fog, and I happened to be driving through fog when I was listening to it the other morning, and it was like having the soundtrack, my own soundtrack to my life. It was brilliant. It was slightly eerie because it was so in keeping with what I was seeing as I was driving, and the music was so fitting to the fog that was surrounding me that yeah, it was like having my own personal soundtrack. So I really, really liked that. All the pieces I really like. Storm, again, there's edgy elements to it. There's things that kind of just give that feel of a storm. There's some very percussive playing and strumming and muting in Storm that isn't in some of the other songs that really create that stormy atmosphere. Similar with Rain, you get that kind of different elements of Rain. You get the nice kind of, oh, you sat inside and you can hear the rain outside, but then slightly more stormy aspects to that one as well. If you can't tell, I really like it. I like instrumental music, and I love film music, and this has that similar sort of feel to it for me. So it's music that you can kind of be very ambient with and can drift, and you can just listen to it and let it wash over you. But it's also, I think, if it conjures up images for you, particularly if you want to think about it with the titles, it's really, really good for that. Which, doing a review, made me kind of think about that a little bit more, and that was an element that I really enjoyed with it. So I'd highly recommend thinking about the different kind of things that Sam is trying to write about when you're listening to it. I think that's a really, really good point. I'm going to play a bit of Sunrise, just to give you an idea of what that's like. Sammy said I can play whatever I like, so I was tempted to play the whole album, but I thought no, better not do that. But yeah, I'll play a little bit of Sunrise. Cool, and hopefully you could hear the way that builds with the strings at the beginning and the way it builds up. You can picture a sunrise while it's happening. I'm also, in a minute, so I'm going to play you a little bit of Storm, because I think that gives you the other end of the spectrum of what Sam is kind of writing. And again, like those percussive elements and things in there. Let's have a little listen to Storm. Okay, so as I said earlier, I've got Sammy here. He's not here. It's not even filmed on the same day. Don't know why I'm trying to fool everybody. And I've just realised I've left the door open during all of this. That's annoying, isn't it? Let's shut the door. Yeah, I had a really good chat with Sammy about how he recorded the album and writing the album and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm going to play that now. Really hope you enjoy it. And don't forget to like, subscribe, ring the bell, all of that stuff. And I hope you enjoy the interview with Sammy. So, as I just said, the other me, that probably wasn't wearing these clothes. And
the other you.
The other me. We have Sammy with us. We have 4StringBoy with us.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
This is fun, isn't it?
It's beautiful. It's I see you, you see me. It's great.
Yeah, there's something in this. Something in this combination.
You reckon?
Yeah, you never know. Some kind of,
okay.
Yeah, who knows? I've realised when I have a desk, I can't sit up as well. I sit like this.
Oh, that's like I'm being grilled. I'm being grilled. Did you do it? Did you do it?
It does make you feel a bit like a Piers Morgan or a James Corden or something who always sit behind a desk.
Like a massive twat.
Yeah. Pretty much. Anyway, we are here to talk about your new album.
I suppose so.
Which I've just done a little review of.
Which is very kind, I think.
Well, was it?
I don't know. Let's save this for a couple of days.
It was a very kind review. Sammy hasn't seen the review that good. Everyone has just seen.
No.
I mean, I really like it. I do really, really like it. I love many aspects about it. I love the fact that it's themed.
Cool.
Which, for some reason, I've recorded quite a lot of weather-themed music in my time. It does seem to be a reoccurring theme. But I quite like it because it's the one thing I was struggling with is how to describe it, because it's not classical, but it's got a classical...
Yeah. It's when Apple Music has been asking me, and Spotify have been like, what genre do you want? And I'm like, mate, I don't know. It's been a real problem because people have been wanting to call it folk because it's ukulele, and I'm like, it's not quite folk. And then it's a little bit classical, but if you look at me, that's instantly turned off. Yeah. But it's also played on a ukulele, so I don't know. Contemporary classical is the closest I've gotten to, which is like the fancy word for film and like music. And that's the closest I can get to, I think.
Well, it is very filmic, and and I know, when we've spoken before, that's one of the things that you're kind of interested in. Massively. Is writing for picture, let's say, and that comes across in the album. And it's sort of, I think the thing that I really liked about it, I mean, let's forget about the genre because it's what it is. It's your album, and it's what it is. I hate those things on Apple, and when you're uploading your music and you have to choose, and there's never anything that truly fits.
No. It's very stressful. It's a weird box.
Yeah, unless you're doing K-pop or J-pop, in which case the categories are on there.
Yeah. That's true. The next album, though, I'll hit it. Don't worry.
Yeah, get a K-pop album there. And but yeah, what I like about it being themed is when you're looking at what the songs are, you can imagine them. Also, I mean, I've been listening to it in the car, and so I was driving the other morning. It was foggy. I listened to Fog, and I was like, "This is brilliant."
Nice.
But they do as much as you can do, because sometimes when people theme something, it's kind of like it's just a name.
Yeah.
And without blowing smoke up your ass, it's not just a name on this, really. Like Frost, for instance. Yeah. You can hear it in the music. You can hear what you're trying to do, and that you're trying to make the music descriptive of what you're writing about. Was that actually the case, or did you just write a load of stuff and stick weather names?
So, in all honesty, how it started was with Rain. Rain was the very first track I wrote for the album when it wasn't meant to be an album. I wasn't writing an album. It just happened with Rain. And Rain is essentially one of my Fingerstyle Thursday pieces, number 24. And it was basically, originally I was going to do a Fingerstyle Thursday album, which is just like my little 30-second pieces, but with a bit of backing. So that's originally what I was going to do. And actually, So it's a lie. Rain is a lie, saying it's the first one. So 12 degrees Celsius is Fingerstyle Thursday number 12, and that's all it is. And that was actually what caused the album. So that was me recording it in, putting some backing to it, and being like, this is fun.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, I've got to say, the 12 degrees Celsius, I couldn't get the relationship quite as tight.
Oh, yeah.
I was struggling a little bit with that one, but
me and my wife have been getting photos for every single weather, and she's like, well, "What do you want for 12 degrees Celsius?" And I'm like, I have no idea. I have no idea how to represent that either. So no,
it's a really rubbish temperature. Isn't it? Unless you're hitting 18 and then you're starting going, okay, so it's nice today.
Yeah.
But 12 also, it's not horrible.
No,
it's
but
not
I think
8 and down.
I think that's the British side, right?
Yeah.
It can't be good. It can't be bad. It can't be bad. It's got to be like all right.
It's all I could take from it is 12 is a very grey day.
That's basically it.
Yeah.
No, the 12 and the 25 were very much because they are the Fingerstyle Thursdays. So they were like easy catches in the name. You know what I mean? They were great to that. I had to research what 25 degrees Fahrenheit was because I was like, 25 degrees Celsius doesn't sound like that. And
no,
luckily,
we're British. Is that not like boiling temperature?
no, it's so 25 Fahrenheit is -3 Celsius.
Is it?
So, yeah. So it's Fahrenheit is way hotter than.
Yeah, of course it is, yes.
Yeah. But now I know. We're useless at that. So,
because they have like 90 degrees, don't they, and stuff. So
bingo, exactly.
Yeah.
So that fit quite well. But no, so it was with Rain. So that was like, I still hadn't decided the name when I recorded 12 degrees Celsius. I wanted to incorporate 12 into it because it's Fingerstyle Thursday 12, and I thought it was a nice nod to it. But then when I wrote Rain, it was that harmonic. The harmonics like intro in the middle section are both like the same technique.
Yeah.
And that is a technique I've been working on, and I've always taught harmonics that way. And it was always, as I used it, I was like, it does kind of sound like raindrops. And then people kept telling me it sounds like raindrops. And so it was kind of like, if I call the track Rain, it kind of feels like a miserable, rainy day. And that very much then kicked it off to, okay, maybe I can, actually start writing some more weathers. So then all the other tracks were, and I mean, like I said, Fog is Fingerstyle Thursday 22, but just ramped up. That's it. So some of them are Fingerstyle Thursdays, but I've modified them because I had the weather in mind and I wanted to modify it to it. But for example, Frost was completely unique. Sunrise was like was the second track I wrote, and that was like the completely original. There's no Fingerstyle Thursday about it. It was like, I was very happy when I did that because it was the total original track I wrote. And I was like, I reckon I can do this then. You know what I mean? I blasted that out and I was like, okay, I could actually do this. And then Frost was third and came after that. Yeah. So I did purposely try as much as I could to put, to basically, same with like Storm, you know what I mean? Yeah. Storm is horrible, intense, and it's meant to sound like there's a storm that's gone through and kind of in the middle, you're in the eye of the storm a little bit, but...
You can definitely hear that, and I think that was the thing that I was getting at. You kind of, as the album flows through, it's hard to link absolutely everything, but you've got those effectively big numbers in there. You've got Storm, you've got Rain, you've got Frost, you've got the things that kind of, and you can really hear it in the music, which I really liked, because when you're doing an instrumental album, it can get a little bit from an audience point of view, and I've done quite a few instrumental albums myself.
Oh, okay.
that aren't themed.
Yeah.
And and even I'm bored by some of them. I think having that theme going through it kind of sort of, it just kind of pulled it all together for me. So I really liked that.
Awesome, thank you.
Recording wise, I think we've talked about this before, but maybe not on camera. I can't remember.
I think we most definitely have.
But you do all the recording yourself,
correct?
Which I really, really like. I love the instrumentation you use. I love the sort of the cello and the
Thank you. I mean,
strings that you put on.
It's thanks to Spitfire Labs, which we've definitely talked about. You know what I mean? In their library. Yes, it's very much thanks to them.
Yeah, well, it is. But then at the same point, you see, and I'd made a decision I wasn't going to talk too much about samples.
Yeah.
Because I use samples myself. I mean, in layman terms, people won't actually have a clue what we're talking about, probably.
No.
But a sample it allows you to play different instruments on a keyboard, is in its most basic form, I guess.
Everything is
and
recorded.
Yeah, and I use samples a lot in recordings that we make here, an awful lot. But I guess it depends what you're using them for. When you're using things like stringed instruments, you always have to get them to sound real.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's a real problem.
Which was my reason for not kind of talking too much about it, because I think yours do sound very real, and I think from a listener point of view, that's all that matters. So that cellist was brilliant. He was great.
I owe a lot to that cellist. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. But the instrumentation and the thing that people don't get with samples is that they don't play themselves. You still have to play them, and you have to play them very musically in a certain way to get the realism out of them. And I think that's where the talent is.
Yeah.
When you're using that kind of stuff. But so, I mean, you're doing all the arrangements for them. How does that come about? Are you presumably you're writing first on ukulele and then working out piano and arrangements that go with them?
So that's exactly what it is. Every track was first written on the ukulele, and before I had quite got to the point of recording anything, I did a little UK tour, which must have been almost a year ago now, in October last year. And in that set I had, for example, I had Frost, I had Rain, I had Storm, I definitely had Fog as well. I had these tracks that none of them had backing. None of the backing had started or existed, really. It was kind of just this. The only one that had backing was this idea of, like I said, of things start first at 12. That was the only one that had backing, and it was kind of, you'll be very used to recording something and then it living on your hard drive for about 5 years, and then you pick it back up one time and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot I did this. And that's kind of what it did. And I had these pieces, and, I thought... It was basically because I'm coming from a ukulele, I wanted them to, one, show off what a ukulele can do, but mainly so it could be played solo on a ukulele without any of the backing. That's always been like the project with all of the songs, and that's like why on the album I've included like all of them without the backing as well, just to showcase that I think all of them as compositions stand up without the backing. The backing is just my nerdery enjoying the textures and things on top. So it's always come from that ukulele side, and then because obviously the ukulele has quite a limited range to it, right? And again, this is a discussion we've had before, but my first instrument is I'm a bass player. So I'm used to the exact opposite range of that. And I love listening out for low tones, and basically, as a bass player, how you can change the root note under somebody's chord, and and that's just you can change out chord voicings and stuff like that. So that's kind of what I wanted to do with the backing. I didn't want it to just follow the ukulele and do what the ukulele does. I wanted it to almost be like the second half of the puzzle, so it could kind of change a little bit of the voicing of what's underneath. So it was kind of trial and error. I always tried to keep it to as little instruments as possible because I'd never wanted the ukulele to get buried. The whole point of this for me was to make it ukulele based, and for not it just to be you listen to it and the ukulele is part of it. I always wanted the ukulele to show it off. But I mean, I'm very comfortable on a piano, so it was kind of always... It came as the piano was added first, and then I changed the piano to either like cello or strings or stuff like that. And then after that, backing it up with some bass, and that was pretty much, I'd try and leave it at a very small amount.
Yeah, and that comes through. Interesting what you're saying about the bass there. And I heard a quote the other day that I've got no idea whose it was or where I saw it or who I was talking to. And they said a chord's never a chord until the bass player plays.
You know what, I've heard and seen that quote, and I can't tell you either. But
it was one day this week.
Yeah. You're absolutely
and I was
correct.
like, I've seen that somewhere, and I was like, that's like, I mean, it completely buggers up playing the ukulele, doesn't it?
It really does. It really does. That's why one of Christopher Davis Shannon's quotes that he says all the time, chords don't exist, is one of my favourite, because on ukulele especially, they don't. You know what I mean? It's like, why is the Hawaiian D7 a D without having a D in it? You know what I mean? It's because the bass player is playing a D. That's why. And
I mean, one chord shape can be about 6 different chords.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And the bass player will tell you exactly which one it is.
Yeah. Yeah, and it could be different the next time they play that song. If I was playing bass, anyway. The backing track thing interests me purely because I think there's a definite... People seem to have a definite preference. And I don't know whether that's because you quite often you author them both.
Yeah.
You know, sort of I've been on your Tuesday live stream, and where, you know, sometimes you'll be like, oh, I might play backing track with this one, or I might play solo. And you see people pitching, going, you know, like, oh, I love it without the backing track. Oh, I love it with the backing track. I find it amazing how almost divisive it seems to be.
Oh, yeah, you know what? I agree. Because to me, I always thought it was going to be 100% with the backing.
Yeah.
And that's why I worried so much about trying to get a live setup with the backing. And it was very much the first time I used backing tracks live was at the Berlin Ukulele Festival, and I'd never tested it before. And I was like, well, if you're going to test it, then this is how you're going to do it. And it worked flawlessly, and it was great. But it was kind of, I was then, I don't, almost not paranoid, but worried that actually a lot of it, the weight was with the backing tracks. So I thought if I didn't play it with the backing tracks, it wouldn't sound good anymore. And you're right. And I've added backing tracks to like certain covers now, and people are like, oh my God, this is the best version of the cover. Yeah. And so many people are like, it doesn't need it, it can handle it on its own. But you're right, it's really, I can't predict it at at all. I have no idea what people want.
My vote is with the backing tracks, because
that's mine too, thank you. Yeah.
Well, I thought it was. I didn't want to presume, but I thought it was.
Yeah, totally.
But I think purely because as well, you're not just picking out a melody. And I think if you were playing with backing tracks and you're just picking out a tune, which some people do.
Oh, totally, yeah.
It's not, but your ukulele playing is so full on.
Yeah.
That it's the main part of the track is always going to be ukulele, and that's why I like the little bits around it, because the ukulele is still by far the feature. Yeah,
like I said, I don't ever want to be reliant on the backing track. That's never what I want to do, because obviously if there's a tech failure, if there's some mad gig where I couldn't use the backing tracks, I don't want to be the person that's like, no, I can't do it anymore. You know what I mean? Yeah. I want to be the ukulele player that can play them solo if needed, and it'd be fine.
Yeah. Here's a question for you. Strangely enough, during an interview, I've got one question. When I can stop talking about myself, I've got one question.
Question's good. Yeah.
There might be more. How long did it take? So, beginning the process. Now, I know like some of the stuff was written kind of before you were perhaps doing an album, but if you, from the point that you said, oh, I'm going to make an album, to actually releasing it later this month, what's that timescale?
So I must have started recording. So like I said, it was post tour that really solidified that I was going to make it an album. You know what I mean? When I was on tour, I was like, I really have to do this, and because my set list was mainly covers, and then there's these 4 originals, but then afterwards, like it's kind of now reversing, which is never a plan, but. I think I properly started recording and getting into it maybe November last year. And then technically, so the album was all recorded and mixed, not mastered, because originally I wasn't going to master. I can't master, basically. So I wasn't going to master it. I was just going to smash the album out there, and it'd be like a half-assed kind of thing. And that was March.
Right, okay.
So
pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean...
Quick, really, I guess, but...
Yeah, basically, whenever... It usually took me a day to get a track down, basically. And when I say a day, I mean I'm always teaching halfway through the day. So it would take me 4 or 6 hours, basically, to record the ukulele, record all the backing. And the backing usually... The first thing usually I played, I was like, that works. Yeah. That's totally cool. It was just tweaking the levels, making sure everything's panned, and listening to it. But that it was basically that. It was. I'd write and record the track in a day, and then I would put basically the backing track on my phone, and like on an evening, I would just put the backing track on, and I'd play the ukulele through it. I'd play it through my TV. I'd play it through my phone. I'd play through it because I just wanted to hear it through. You mix. You got to hear it through as many different kinds of speakers and headphones as possible, and make sure nothing sticks out or whatever. So it was very much that. But then when I decided that we were going to actually do it properly, that I sent it all to be mastered, which meant that there was a couple of the mixes that I then tweaked, and actually there was, for example, Sunset, the original version of Sunset, which you can still hear. So all the pre-mastered versions are on YouTube currently in a nice playlist. The original version of Sunset sounds nothing like the album version of Sunset. It's completely different. And that's because on the last half, I just decided no. Same with Breeze, very much last minute. I decided no on lots of that. So it was, I had a very rough, not really, pretty almost finished, but wouldn't have been as good in about March. But then I'm glad I sat on it for longer to tweak.
You've been very patient with releasing it, which is by far the, I mean, again, like without talking about myself, we run a record label here.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't have the patience. If we do something really good, it's kind of, and the artist is chomping at you, going like, "Can we just put it out? Can we just put it out?"
Yeah.
And realistically, having that almost like a 3-month thing of 100%. Right, I'm going to do promo, I'm going to do video releases, I'm going to do snippets, I'm going to do all of this stuff. So yeah, I mean, I think the release has been spot on, and unfortunately, no credit can go to me of that. That is all my wife, and that's all of her. And that's basically, if it was up to me, knows what she's doing.
Yeah, she really does. If it was up to me, I would have kicked the album out straight away. And for the people who don't know, if I haven't spoken about my wife before, she's basically, if you see anything cool about me ever, that's her. It's basically, she does everything for me. So all my website graphics, branding, videography, everything. So I was ready to kick it out, and she was like, actually, because she's done this for other artists before, basically. She was like, you kind of need to release a single at a time in order to get playlisting and stuff. And I'm like, can't I just release it now? And she's like, trust me. No.
Technically, just because I love all the technical recording stuff. So what did you record on? I presume you mic'd up ukuleles.
Yeah. It's I've avoided plugging in ukuleles for a very long time because I just prefer the sound of a mic'd ukulele. But at Berlin, it almost the sound man was like, because I don't play very loud as a player. I'm a very quiet, delicate player, and so the sound man in Berlin was his name was Ragnar. He was incredible, but he was like, "Are you going to play any louder than that?" I was like, "Nope," and he just went, "Uh-oh." But he sorted it. He absolutely nailed it. But it was basically, I could not hear myself on stage because the monitors couldn't pick it up without feedbacking and stuff. So I knew I had to get to the point that I've got to start having it plugged, and because it's easier, you know what I mean? If you look at all the players, they're all playing plugged in for a reason, and it's because you don't have to deal with mics. No, all the stuff is it was recorded with this mic, which is not the good Shure one, but the one and the cheaper one.
No, although there's not a lot of difference between that one and
the SM7B, is it?
The SM7B, which has a lower output than that one as well. So you have to have a cloud burst.
You do, that is very true. That is very true.
To make it louder anyway. So I'm not a fan of the SM7B.
Oh, that's good to hear. Good. Me neither. Hate it. Absolute shit. No, hate it.
If we both had one, we'd love it. We'd be the best.
Exactly. We'd be like, oh, I love the SM7B. Yeah. But no, it's basically, I recorded it all in this room. This room is not treated, awful, full of soft things. So the basically the reverb, the sound in here is awful, right? So basically I wanted to use a dynamic mic because if I use a condenser, obviously, as you know, it'd pick up the whole room and it'd be a nightmare. And obviously I have my wife who also works at home. We both work at home 24/7. So trying to get a silent house isn't going to work. So this little baby, dynamic, cranked up gain, lots, and very close to the uke. I was very, very happy with the sound. I thought it was great. It was.
Yeah, I think it's great,
It worked out.
Great. I think recordings should always be about performances, and and as someone who's a recording engineer, I just tell people whenever they ask me this stuff it doesn't matter what microphone you're using.
Yeah,
it really, if you put in a good performance, you could use a 20 quid mic off Amazon and it will still be a good performance that's caught on that microphone.
It's
and
totally
you can EQ and compress and you can do all sorts of stuff to it afterwards and everything else, but it's all about the performance. It's never about the equipment. And,
it's totally true. And I mean, one of the things as well is that, I mean, for me, like, I just physically can't afford to go to a studio or put the time aside for that. So that was never going to be a thing. So at least the thing about, with my limited knowledge about mixing and stuff like that, at least I'm here every day teaching and stuff. And so in those gaps, I would just put Logic on, mix, listen through the headphones, make sure it's okay. And basically, it just meant that I could attack it at any time of the day, which is, it's not... I know, I'm sure if I would have sent it to a studio, then it would have sounded even better and greater. But it was it's that thing that you have to decide on. I was in control, and it just meant that I could do it 24/7, and that meant it was going to get done, essentially.
Yeah, I don't know if it would sound better, if I'm honest. It's like I say, I've been having a really good listen to it. I wouldn't know whether you'd recorded it at home or recorded it in a studio by listening to it. I think people get carried away. I think once they know something, and it's kind of like it affects their kind of judgment on things.
Yeah,
but
totally.
I'm really very impressed with the mixing and everything. The balance is really nice. Ukulele is not the easiest thing to mix. It kind of should be. Yeah. But it has to fit in a very specific gap, which means you have to kind of clear that gap from all the other sounds.
Totally. Yes.
To get it to sit right. And,
that was one of the perks of playing with low frequency piano or bass or low frequency cellos. It was kind of then actually that top end, I didn't have any hi-hats or cymbals to contest with. That crispiness was all space for the ukulele with the harmonics. So basically I was very lucky that carved out, and that's why I kind of put everything around it to fit it.
So what was your biggest challenge? What's your biggest challenge when releasing this album? What's been the hardest bit?
A lot of it was when to move on with a track. There was Fog I re-recorded it 4 times. Just the ukulele playing, because each time I wasn't happy, either my timing wasn't correct or something, and because I'm very much into sound listening, and so I would sit there and listen to it, and so if there was something slightly out, as much as when I'm doing covers, I don't care for that. I'll make mistakes, and I'll always admit to it, and it doesn't fucking matter. No one cares. But for something that's going to go on Spotify and recording on an album, it felt very different, and because I haven't done that before, it was a bit more precious, so I really wanted to get it right. So saying good night and this is done to a track was very difficult. I found that very, very, very hard, because I wanted to go and tweak it, and a lot of times I just wasn't happy. But I know that over time, I just had to say, basically, you're not going to get any happier, mate. So you just need to leave it alone.
It is hard. You have to. I find when I'm mixing stuff, or when I've been working on an album for a long time with somebody, that sometimes can be a year and a half. Yeah. That all of a sudden your ears, it's not your head so much, it's your ears, go into a different space. Yeah. And they go into the listener space as opposed to the creative space, where you're analysing every little detail of everything. And I think some people struggle with this, but it's a really good switch to be able to just switch off and go, right, I'm now a listener. Quite often that happens when, if I do a final master. At that point, I'm kind of do you know what? I'm not making decisions about whether the bass is loud enough or
it's gone.
Whether I like that sound. It's all gone. And all of a sudden I start listening like a listener. And you realise you don't listen to any of the things you've been worrying about. You don't pick up on them. You don't hear them.
No, you're right.
And it's just... there was a story about Sting once went into the studio. And he was recording an acoustic guitar part. Yeah. And I think in the end they took about 7 days re-recording this acoustic guitar part, because he got it into his head that he needed to eradicate every little squeak and every little sound. And he just got it into his head. So they spent 7 days working on this, and it was literally almost a note at a time at times. A week later, after he'd been listening to it, they reverted back to the very first take that he did of it, with all the squeaks and all the noises. And
always such good stories about Sting, right?
Yeah. There's other stories I know about Sting. Probably aren't for this, but anyway, cool. Well, I think hopefully with the review as well and everything, that gives people... What I wanted to do was give people an overview of what it's like to make an album. Yeah. Because in the ukulele world, there's not loads of it. We've been reviewing albums and stuff, and there are plenty out there, but you have to search for them. They're not... Totally. They're not... And sometimes they're not that ukulele based. Yeah. As well.
Yeah.
So I think my big take and what I'm trying to say to the audience on your album is it is completely ukulele orientated. I think you've got sort of normal re-entrant tuning. Tenor ukulele on a lot of it. You've got baritone ukulele. I really like, which I've said in my review as well, but I really like the way that you use the baritone.
Oh, cool! Thanks.
Just because it's there to fill out a gap, and
totally.
I think it depends. If you're playing baritone as a solo instrument, I've heard players that seem to just almost play it as high up the neck as they can, so it's more in keeping with.
Right, got you.
And I watched. I think it was Alex Beds did a really interesting video on how to play baritone and how you treat it differently and how those bass notes are kind of to pick out very specific things and not just play it as a.
Oh, gotcha. I mean. No, you're right. I see them because I don't play low G pretty much at all, and that's because I kind of in my brain I keep like the two spectrums like religiously different. I've got the high G is lovely and crisp and up there on top, and then if I'm going for a baritone, then of course I'm going to use like the lowest notes I possibly can because that's what it sounds beautiful with. So it is very much I see them as two completely, almost very, very different instruments, and that's my problem with low G. Is when I play it, I can't make it sound good. So it's I need either end.
Oh, well, I really like the use of baritone on there.
Thanks.
It's a great album. It's definitely worth going out. You can get it in all the usual places. I think, are you doing it on Bandcamp as well? Did I see that?
I haven't got it on Bandcamp because I've got it on my website instead. So you can buy the digital MP3 album from my website, and if you pre-order it now, you'll get it a day early because I'm cheeky.
Nice. Very nice. It's going to be on all the streaming platforms towards the end of September.
September 29th.
Cool. So coming up in hopefully a couple of weeks if I get this video out when I plan on getting it out. And on all streaming platforms, all normal places. Do go and support Sammy. Sort of, I don't like saying it, but if you're going to stream it, also go to his website and buy a copy because it'll look nice on. Well, actually, no, it won't look nice because you haven't got physical copies. It'll look nice in your iTunes library.
It'll look nice in your downloads folder.
In your downloads folder, it will look fantastic.
It'll look beautiful.
But it is a struggle as a musician to be supported by your music nowadays. It's great for artists when they can get millions of streams, and hopefully that's coming your way. But it's really hard to actually, compared to, sort of, if you could sell 200 albums at 10 quid a pop.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly.
A few years ago, at least you had a bit of cash in the bank.
Yeah.
You don't get that now. So please do go on to Sammy's website, which is 4StringBoy.com.
4StringBoy.com.
And have a look at the album on there. So thanks for joining me. Thanks for joining me as well, Sammy. It's been brilliant to. It's nice to review an album where we can actually talk to the person that's created the album. That's quite cool. I've enjoyed that. That's nice.
I'm always up for talk, mate.
Yeah, and my geeky side about talking about recording and stuff. So I love all that.
Well matched.
But thank you for joining me. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and we'll be back soon.